Thank you. If you can all see my presentation, I will start. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Christos. My name is Samuele Livraghi. I work as an energy policy expert at IEECP. And today I'll be the first speaker and I will be providing a bit of a bridge of an overview of where we stand on tackling energy poverty in the latest version submitted of the NECPs to observe what we can do more in bridging energy saving obligations and now the social climate plans. So today I will give you a bit of an overview on the legal context. I will update you on what's new about energy poverty in the final NECPs. I will of course dive a bit deeper into what member states have been doing in merit to Article 8.3 of the EED. I'll then highlight some risks and gaps of somehow and somewhere weak implementation of these requirements, and then I will connect this with the work done in the social climate plans so that then my colleagues will proceed on it. So we begin with the governance regulation that we know that under
Samuele, excuse me, but I see a black screen. For the moment.
Is everyone seeing a black screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me share again. What about now?
Wait. No, we see another screen.
Not the
presentation. I think that was your schedule or something.
Okay. Wait. Sorry, I had this ready. Okay. Let's try again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So beginning with the governance regulation that helped in establishing the NECPs under Article 3.3 and Annex 1, we know the member states are required to assess the number of households in energy poverty within their NECPs, and where this number of households in energy poverty is found to be significant, they also should include a nationally indicative objective and targeted policies to reduce energy poverty, and in doing so, embedding energy poverty directly into climate governance. Then moving on to the request of the Energy Efficiency Directive, we see for the first time a clear union-wide definition of energy poverty, but most importantly, in Article 8.3, we see a mandate where a share of national energy savings must come from actions benefiting people affected by energy poverty, vulnerable consumers, and those in social housing. And lastly, in the Social Climate Fund regulation, we see that the Commission tried to translate these objectives into financial instruments, and through Article 4.2 and 8.2, we see the obligation to include measures aimed at reducing energy poverty, such as building renovation, clean transport access, and energy efficiency. So for the first time, we see that tackling energy poverty and energy vulnerability is now a legal obligation, not just a social priority, and it needs to be followed by concrete, measurable actions. Then, diving deeper into the work that has been done by the member states, we see that first, 4 more countries compared to the previous assessment that included 17 countries now have introduced an official definition for a total of 21 countries. We see that Latvia and Luxembourg use indicators to define energy poverty, and also other countries that had been previously more opposed to the concept of energy poverty have been started referring to this energy poverty framing proposed in the EED. So in 2025, we see that more than 18 countries have reported indicators to quantify energy poverty. 11 countries have expert groups or observatories in place to study the issue, but only 10 countries have set explicit quantified targets to reduce energy poverty. And as such, without targets, it can become very difficult to monitor progress, allocate funding effectively, or meet obligations like those that we will mention now under Article 8.3 of the EED. Indeed, we know that through the NECP assessment, we are given an input for Article 8.3 obligation, so that under the NECP, we identify the people that are in need that should be targeted in Article 8.3, and Article 8.3 offers the mechanism to operationalize these NECP objectives. So the measures in the NECP should now align with the delivery of 8.3 energy savings. Indeed, under Article 8.3, member states are required to ensure that a share of cumulative energy savings is specifically targeted to people affected by energy poverty, vulnerable consumers, or those in low-income households. And also critically, this share must be proportional either to the reported population in energy poverty, or it should be calculated using a standard method, the one provided by the EED. Then, when we look at where things stand in the national plans, we see that of the 23 that were available when we reviewed them, only 16 member states had made a reference to Article 8.3, and only 12 of those had actually quantified savings for vulnerable groups. Then we also see that there are some cases in which some countries have reported certain savings under Article 8.3, but they haven't explicitly set any targets for reducing energy poverty, and also the opposite is true. It does seem like a little bit of a very specific thing to go and look at this stuff, but this matters because without a clear link between NECP targets and Article 8.3 savings, member states may risk designing energy efficiency policies that are disconnected from what the actual needs of the people are. And here in this chart, for example, I am showing that the share of cumulative energy savings that is each country has committed to vulnerable groups under Article 8.3, and that's the bar in green, against the arithmetic average of the 4 energy poverty indicators defined by the EED shown in blue. And we see from these countries that have reported these values that there are levels of ambition that vary significantly. For example, we see clearly France standing out, having committed almost 35% of its cumulative energy savings to vulnerable groups. We also know this to be an exception because of their white certificate schemes. And then we see other countries that are indeed closely aligned with the energy poverty benchmark, like Lithuania, Spain, and Cyprus, and then also other countries that are falling a little bit behind in reporting an accurate number of energy savings for the vulnerable groups. Here, I basically show the same graph, but instead of averaging the 4 indicators required by the EED, I only averaged the first 3 indicators that they required, excluding the at risk of energy poverty. That can sometimes distort the picture by inflating the perceived vulnerability level in countries where broader poverty is higher, but energy poverty is less severe. And still, we see that even so, the national average drops slightly in countries like Finland and Spain and France, but there is still some work to be done. Therefore, even with visible progress, there are still significant risks and implementation gaps across the final NECPs. Many of these will likely affect and impact the effectiveness of Article 8.3 implementation. Of course, the first major gap is the absence of explicit targets that will lead to an unclear baseline of operation that will probably also lead to weak implementation of this mandate. Second, there is lack of clarity and consistency in applying Article 8.3. We know that 16 member states mentioned the article, but only 12 actually quantify the energy savings for vulnerable groups. And that becomes a problem because without transparency, we might risk energy efficiency schemes missing the most in need, and also we might incur in weakening monitoring and reporting, increasing the risk of non-compliance. As such, the broader societal and structural issue around it is the lack of integration between climate policies and social policies that may lead to siloed action. And this is where the work that our colleagues will present about the social climate plans is going to be extremely fundamental and interesting to read. As we see that the plans are not just an administrative requirement, but they can be a strategic opportunity for member states to address also current gaps in the NECP. Why? Because these social climate plans should explicitly be designed to address affordability and vulnerability, particularly in the context of the new ETS2, which will cover, as we know, emissions from buildings and road transport. And we've seen working on the preparatory material for the social climate plans that new ways of identifying vulnerable groups will be made available, and also new and more targeted design measure will be available to ensure that households can access clean and affordable energy and transport. And at the same time, this can also reinforce the Article 8.3 obligations. Now that we've discussed about all of this, where are we? Like, we can see that progress is visible in the work that we've all been doing, but it's still highly fragmented across countries. And now I will say the same thing that probably we have heard for the past 3, 4, 5 years in energy poverty. We need to strengthen national energy poverty definition and indicators. But I would like this to be more of a call to understand that proposing a definition, proposing an indicator, it is a method for us to support people on the ground and should not be seen only as a requirement to fulfill a legal obligation of our member states. Secondly, I would also suggest sometimes to make targets mandatory where prevalence is high, because we know that some countries are struggling much more than others. And also, in making these targets mandatory, offers support for member states in tracking and reporting so that we can see if there is any beneficial effect to the measures that we're trying to implement. Thank you for listening. And that was my presentation.